Coming up on this episode of Flirtations, we have Yue Shu and Julie Krafchick, the dynamic duo behind the Dateable podcast and the new book, How to Be Dateable, to have a conversation with us about, well, dating. Julie and Yue will share with us the 7 things that matter when looking for a partner and why connection and compatibility goes way beyond some chemistry and attraction. We'll learn about the key qualities to focus on when choosing someone for a relationship, how to avoid getting stuck in surface-level connections, and what it really means to be dateable. Along the way, we'll touch on emotional availability, long-term compatibility, and how to create genuine, lasting connections so you can feel more confident and empowered in dating. So whether you're single, dating, or just curious about what makes relationships really thrive, this episode is for you. It's for everyone, basically. Stay tuned, flirties.
I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. Hello, my name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and a gay Libra. Everyone has an inner flirt.
Hey, flirty.
Live, laugh, flirt.
Work the flirt.
Work the flirt. Delulu is the Salulu. Expert on the flirt.
Hey, flirty. There's always another flirt.
Everyone has an inner flirt. Get out of your head and into the flirt.
Flirties, on the show today, we welcome Yue Shu and Julie Krafchick, authors of the new book, How to Be Dateable, and co-hosts of the Dateable podcast, to have an incredible conversation with us about the 7 things that matter when looking for a partner. Hello and welcome.
Oh, hello, flirties. We're so excited to be here.
I'm excited as well for this cross collaboration, as I have been following, listening to the podcast, and now I get to dive into the book as well, which is out. It's out.
Yes. It's out into
finally.
the world.
Oh my gosh. And
our baby.
I gotta say, it's got some bulk. Like, I can hold it, I can pick it up. It has got context. I'm excited.
It's got words in it. Plenty of words.
Chapters. Pages.
Everything you expect from a book. We have a lot of glossary definition terms too.
Ooh. Wait, there's a glossary?
Oh, there's a glossary in the back, but
oh my God.
The different
flirt searcher
terms.
in me is very appreciative of a glossary and index.
You know what's funny? My friend who's been married for a long time, she's like, did you guys invent the term situationship? I'm like, no.
I wish.
It's because you just haven't been dating in a while, but here's a glossary you can look at.
It's been around. I mean, but important, because I'm sure you get that question sometimes too. Terms that we take for granted and just know, FWB, friends with benefits.
Yep.
I mean, there are flirties listening to this all over the world that use different terms or just see things a little bit differently, even though our experiences are more, I think, uniformly related, right? But how we describe things and term things isn't always the same. So, all right, let us get started with this conversation today. I'd love if you could share with the flirties at the top just a little bit more about yourselves.
About ourselves. Well,
yeah.
When I was 2, no, just kidding. I think the origin story is very fascinating between Julie and I. We met a decade ago through a mutual friend in San Francisco. And at the time, I had been a dating coach in some major markets like New York, LA, Beijing was another one. And I was very much rooted in the traditional dating culture with rules and with gender roles. And I had come to San Francisco, this brand new city, and I met Julie. And we were both at a point in our lives, no matter what our background was, we were both like trying to figure out dating. We were in our 30s. And I was like, I used to have this shit figured out. And now I don't. Like, I used to coach people on dating. And now I'm at a loss for words because it felt like the rules were obsolete. Gender rules were being kind of thrown out the window. And I didn't know what the path for me was in dating. And that's when I met Julie.
And I think for me, like, I consider myself a late bloomer. Like, so I really started dating a lot in my late 20s.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was using dating sites like the OG Match.com and those ones. And then when Tinder came out, I just remember being like, this is the best thing ever. Because in I don't know if you ever used some of the old sites, but you would wait like weeks to get a reply. And then with Tinder, it was like instantaneous. I just remember going to my roommate and just being like, I got a message back already. It says DTF. And she's just like, I don't ever want to go on that.
Down to find out.
I
was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
But anyways, I think it was an interesting time when UA and I met because I had been on dating apps for a bit now because a lot of them originated in San Francisco, which is tech capital of the world.
Yeah.
So we were using dating apps for years prior to them becoming super mainstream. So for me, it was just the norm of dating. And when I met UA, I had, I thought finally I met the one, all this could be done. And then
I wasn't the one, but
thank you for clarifying.
I was one of many, but I was not the one.
Sorry, the one that was my romantic partner.
Yes.
You are the one. But at that time, I was like, okay, I met the one. This is what made all this worth it. But as many of us have learned, the hard truth is sometimes you can love someone and it still doesn't work out. And, people want a relationship. They don't always have the capacity for one. So we met at this very pivotal point that we're both like, what the F is going on? And how do we actually find the love life that we've wanted and make dating work for us?
Yeah. Yeah, I love it already. I'm curious, how did the podcast come to be? How did that collaboration start?
And that was exactly it. Because every time Julie and I would get together, we would trade dating stories or as I call war stories. It's I survived this day and I survived that day. And then our friends would join the conversations and they would have their stories. So we thought we started recording them. We had some equipment lying around, let's just record it. I think at the time podcasts had just come out, so we were calling it a podcast, but we didn't really know what that meant. But it quickly grew because nobody had a dating podcast at that point, not now where everybody and their mom has one.
True.
There is a podcast called Sex Talks with My Mom or something, whatever. Yeah, it's a mom and
everyone
son,
and their mom really has one.
Quite literally, yeah.
And so we thought we would obviously record these stories, but we wanted to learn from it. We took it as an experiment / research project to see how people are navigating dating. And then the ones that have succeeded, what do they do differently than the rest?
Ooh, yeah.
And also, we didn't feel as alone. I think that's the silver lining of everyone and their mother having a dating podcast and it being so mainstream. Because I know personally, I was like, why can't I get past a third date with anyone? What is fundamentally wrong with me?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have these thoughts, and the fact that we can normalize them and say okay, it is dating culture. The dating culture we're in is not helping any of us. It's not setting us up for success. And I mean, that's our whole book is kind of rooted in that. It's ironic that as dating, I guess, quote unquote experts, what we would take away is you really don't need to be good at dating, at least the way it is today.
Yeah.
It's kind of driving us more to disconnection than connection, which is what we all so deeply crave. So that really is the essence of okay, we've been told we're supposed to date a certain way. There's all these unwritten rules or maybe even written ones, thanks to books like The Rules. And then how do we deconstruct that and actually find the love life that works for us.
Right.
And that's the core of it.
Yeah, because we're all looking for ultimately those connections, right? This is my my number one mission as the flirt coach. Okay, I've got some questions from the flirties. We're going to get into the 7 things. I will say I'm not really that good at math. So I'm going to be tallying off to the side. But I think you're going to get a lot of wisdom and insight throughout this conversation. And I want to come back here, I think right now, to something that Yue said talking about, and Julie, you were speaking to this experience too of maybe you have the game plan, right? Like your 10-point plan, your 7-point plan, whatever. This is how it's going to work. Or you think you have it all figured out, and then you get it out and you get out there and you try and maybe you strive for perfection, or you start to go into anxiety mode or control, or things aren't working out and you react out of emotion perhaps. And so I think speaking to this dating experience that, my gosh, we all have of being like, I thought I knew what I was doing. I don't have a damn clue. Yeah.
Everybody, everybody right now, because arguably we are part of the first generations to truly date for love. Previous generations have dated for marriage, for survival. We don't need to date for survival. So the question now is, if the path is for love, how do we carve out that path? It's not as cut and dry. So I think that's why we are having such a hard time, because we are creating this new canvas for our love lives. And something Julie and I always talk about is like, I love that we can almost check each other on some of our thoughts. Because every time we're like, is this an outdated thought? Is this kind of obsolete? Is this a thought that's even mine? Right. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are thinking, yeah, there are times that you're like, you think you want something, and then you ask, was that even my idea?
Yeah.
Maybe not. And that's why in our book, we actually outline some common traps in modern dating, where you think you are making the decision when it's actually a societal, cultural construct that's making the decision for you.
Yeah, that's so true. And I love that you mentioned because I'm sure you're observing and seeing this too in your work and in writing the book and with the podcast. It's the gender roles are switching up. They're not as cut and dry as they used to be, where if you were a woman and you were dating and you couldn't drive a car or you couldn't have a bank account, it was frowned upon for you to work. I mean, I remember I have a friend and I hope to interview for her for the podcast. She was a Navy nurse and was forcibly discharged when she became pregnant to have a family. Right?
Wow.
Like that is
so wild. Like,
and it wasn't that long
foreign.
ago.
I know.
It wasn't that long ago. And we're no longer dating, a lot of us, for survival out of necessity in some ways to live and put a roof over our heads. And so when those traditional roles start to change and shift, and we're dating for love, which you were speaking to, how empowering though, I think. Yeah. How incredible.
You probably see this though, Benjamin, like with your listeners. It's really empowering. I don't think any woman is going to say like, I wish it was back to that day when I had no control and power. But where it becomes confusing is that now no one's acting because no one knows whose role it is. So we're kind of at this like weird standstill that no one's making moves. And I don't think that's what anyone wants either. And also like add in like Me Too and all of that. Like, again, great movement. There was so much power behind that, but it's made some men a little like gun shy to flirt and make moves and put it out there because you don't want to be seen as like this harasser or predator. And it's usually the guys that are thinking so much about that would never be that in the first place.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I definitely see a lot of that. It's sort of like no one's making the move. No one's making the approach. Or, sometimes if they are, it's sometimes these connections lack the vulnerability or the intimacy. And so that maybe starts to come out of it, as well as now we're tiptoeing into things. There's some trepidation, some hesitancy. So I think this is all framing us very well, as that was a beautiful moment of grounding. As a yoga teacher, I love a moment of grounding. Now getting into namaste to you and all the listeners, the 7 things that matter. I think we were touching on some of these initially here, but now starting to, move forward in the conversation. You're out there, you're dating, maybe you're dating for a while, you're coming into the process after a break, or maybe you kind of quote unquote identify as a late bloomer and you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, just starting to date for the first time. What matters? What should I look for?
I'm so glad you went through kind of the evolution of how we feel and how we date too, because just like flirting, there's been an evolution of how we attract a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And flirting, if you think about it, flirting back in the day was about a power dynamic.
Yes.
How do I become more dominant in the situation by flirting? Or for back in the day, for women, it was how do I appear less dominant so that this man would approach me?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
in the culture that we face right now in modern dating, and in the book that we wrote, it's about putting you at the forefront. It's not about playing games or power dynamics. It's about you being in the driver's seat. And as part of being in the driver's seat, you got to know the direction you're going. You have to know the parameters you set for the people coming into your car, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we came up with the 7 things that matter, because it's no longer about power dynamics. It's no longer about game playing. It's no longer about tricking other people to like you, just like how you teach with flirting. It's about the authenticity grounded in what you are looking for. Yeah. And it's very simple. The 7 things that you're looking for that really matter in a partnership, taking away all the riffraff of rules and game playing. First and foremost, are they consistent? This seems so simple, yet it is, I would say, probably the number one missing in all of my previous dating experiences when I was so lost. Was just like, are they returning your texts? Are they actually showing up when they said they are? Are they following up with communication? Consistency is the baseline of a healthy relationship. You can have anything else, but if you walk away today just thinking about consistency in whatever you're going through right now, that gives you a really good answer already.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, it was a game changer when this became a focal point. And we're not saying to like be with someone where they're consistent and you have no feeling to that. We're absolutely not saying that, but it's the baseline in the sense that this person can have the best resume ever. They can make you feel all the butterflies. You could have crazy chemistry, but if the consistency is not there and you're looking for a long-term committed relationship, then the other stuff doesn't matter. And like for me, I remember I used to just be really focused on like, is this person funny? Are they like the life of the party? Are they like, have the right social circles? Like things that I didn't even like consciously think about, but that's what was drawing to me. And of course, I'm still looking for someone that makes me laugh. It's not like throwing it out the door. But when I switched it to consistency, I was like, oh, okay, if I want to feel like prioritized in a relationship and this person can't even make an hour to meet up, I'm no longer going to put this person as someone I prioritize. And that really allows you to not fall for the situationships and to be in these dead end relationships that you're not getting anything out of either.
Yeah. Yeah. So well said. And we're going to stay here for a minute as it seems like the obvious first thing to look for, but when you're out there and you're putting this in practice and you're dating, this is one of the first things that may go out the window. And so I want to speak to one of the common dating experiences that people I work with, I know listeners have, I've had this myself, is you tend to make excuses for people.
Yes.
Especially if you're having a really strong, maybe emotional connection. They're really fun. The personality, their sense of humor, or really strong physical connection, right? Maybe that's part of it, but they're not consistent with communication or available emotionally in some other really important ways. And so for the flirty listening, that's like, they didn't respond to my text for 2 days, but it's okay. It's okay, right? They're busy, right? I'm busy too.
We call this the settling paradox because we're all so afraid to settle. That's like the biggest fear of everyone, right? Especially in the world where you can almost like cherry pick the qualities like you're on Amazon of a partner.
Yeah.
Yet we settle for situationships and poor treatment and the person that won't respond to our texts. It's exactly what you were just saying, Benjamin. Like we make excuses. We call it like we're almost acting like they're PR agents, like trying to justify every move they make.
And I'm curious now, I want to sort of break down consistency a little bit too. If you think there are different ways we can experience consistency in dating, because I, see that someone may be really consistent in one way and completely all over the place or just lacking any kind of reliability in other ways. So I think this can play into the settling paradox you talk about, where maybe they're really consistent, right? They text all the time, but oop, where's the date?
Yep.
When are we hanging out?
Right.
So
Can't just be
yeah.
texting. Yeah.
No, we're not doing that, right, flirties? We're not doing that.
The consistency has to be in every aspect of
Yeah.
the relationship, not just one, not just the texting because it's easy, right?
Mhm.
And we tend to make excuses when we say, oh, consistency is what I'm looking for. Well, at least they're consistent in this one category. Well,
Yeah.
consistency is actually a consistency across the consistency. There's a better way to put it. But I do love that you brought that up because we have to be really clear about what consistency means and how much we value it.
Yeah.
I think it's also like how they treat you and show up like, that way consistent. Like, are they hot and cold? Are they, the consistent personality? Like, do you know what you're going to get when you see them? Of course, everyone has like a bad day. So I'm not saying people have to be on 100%, but know when like some people are just like, wait, they are a totally different person today. That is confusing, potentially red flags, all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is so good. And it's like, I love consistency, have that be one of your standards as well. Like this should be one of those expectations that is just a part of your overall dating approach, strategy, whatever word you want to use there, because I think if you're used to the hot and cold, the mixed signals, the breadcrumbs, right? You feel like you have to chase. You're always initiating. You're in this state of dysregulation. I know we get used to that sometimes, and that discomfort can almost be a place of comfort, a place of solace, because it's what we're used to. And I hope with this conversation and with the Dateable podcast and with your book that daters help or start to move out of that space, ask for more for themselves, know they deserve more, because you ultimately want safety in a connection. You want to feel like this is someone you can be vulnerable with, you can be intimate with in all the ways, open up to. And if you don't have consistency, I think it's impossible.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up too, because we have this other part of our book, A Dating North Star, that is an exercise where you're like, why am I dating in the first place? And then what are my core needs? So you're dating with your needs at the forefront. And a lot of us don't know our core needs. No. But one of the things that I remember learning through our podcast was, how do you take what bothers you the most in dating and look at what that might be saying? So for me, it was when I wasn't getting the text back and someone said they would set up a date, but they didn't set up the date. That was like the number one thing that made me so anxious in dating. So when I could flip that to be like, okay, the core need is someone reliable, someone consistent. When they say something, they do it. And that is how that became one of the things at the forefront for me.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's right there on my list of non-negotiables. Yeah. Consistency. Yeah.
It's not sexy. It's not like the sexy trait that you hear of, right? When you're like looking for a partner, but it can be if you change the way you think about it.
When someone shows up for you, you don't have to ask. You don't feel like you have to plead and beg and chase. Ooh, you can sit back, receive some of that good attention. I mean, that's turning me on.
I like that shift. That's a good way to think about it.
Well, because, we glamorize bad dating behavior. We go to our friends when it's like, can you analyze this text? Why hasn't this person texted back? And then you enlist your army for that. And then if someone's showing up consistently for you, you're not like going to your friends and saying, oh, he texts me back every time and he shows up and he's reliable. Like there's nothing glamorous about that. So then we think maybe it's boring, or we think it's that there's no chemistry. What we're saying is let's make sure that that's a good sign. If you don't have to go to your friends,
it's a green flag.
To decode a message, that's a good sign. And in addition to that, I just want to take this one step further is, are you also exhibiting consistent behavior? Because sometimes we expect this from others, but we're not doing it ourselves. Or the minute someone is inconsistent, we think our reaction should be to be even more inconsistent. Like, if someone doesn't call you back when they say they will. Well, I'm going to wait 4 days to call them back when I said I would.
Yeah.
That's a trap. You don't want to
Yeah.
get into that cycle. So make sure that you also
Absolutely.
hold yourself accountable for consistent behavior.
Be the person you want to date.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, the self-accountability piece. Yeah, because if you live chronically online, like I know I do, it's all of this, right? Do it for the plot, right? You're going to have something to talk about at brunch, right? You need to be the life of the group chat, right? Give them something to talk about.
You
And I'm
don't.
like,
Right.
I'm kind of like, what's your story arc? What's our narrative? What chapter are we in?
Yeah.
I'm like, you can always craft a new arc.
Right. Well, it goes back to like, why are you dating? Like if you're dating to have something to talk to about your friends, that's fine. Like that might just be the stage you're in.
Truly,
I know for me, like for years, I remember being like, I want a serious relationship. And my best friend being like, do you? Because your behavior doesn't actually show that. So sometimes you just have to get there. And I mean, with all of these 7 things, it's important to make sure you're exhibiting as well.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Let's move to, we got one, consistency. We can check one off. I can count the
one.
That's a big one. It's a big one.
I can count the one. I can do at least that much. How about the second thing? What should the daters be looking for?
Do they bring out the best sides of you? And this is like a nervous system check. Have you ever been on a date and you get home and you're all excited, yet you are anxious, anticipating that next text, not sure how they feel about you, but you mistaken that for chemistry or butterflies? It's good to check, okay, like even after a date, write down, how am I feeling? What sides of me did I show in this date? Oh, the confident side of me, the peaceful side of me, the empathetic side of me, the compassionate side. Great. Check, check, check. But if it's like the anxious side of me, the inauthentic side of me, or the irritable side of me, then that's kind of a reason to pause and think, why are they bringing out these not so great sides?
Yeah.
I remember like a friend of mine, when she was dating this guy, he was high drama. And I had never seen her this way. Like she was acting into it, playing into it, because it's like you almost needed to keep up to be in that relationship. Like she was, going on, when things like hit the fan with them, she would go on a date with someone else just to get a rise out of him. And I'm like, is this the person you want to be? And this isn't how you've been before. Is this actually bringing out the best side of you? And then she was able to see this was not the right person. Fast forward, met someone that is now her husband, that is not bringing out that drama in the slightest.
Yeah. This is really, really important. And I think I want to share this example here that I know a lot of daters have. And this is really, I think, for the casual dating situations, the situationships, right? The friends with benefits, where you have that in-person time that is not frequent, right? There's no consistency there, but you are probably hooking up and it's amazing. They're really hot. You think they're super sexy. And in the moment, you just feel like you can let your guard down and be yourself, right? But I can just be me, right? It's very cool. It's very fun. But then when you're not with them, they bring out the anxiousness. They bring out this sort of emotional reactivity in you. You're looking at your phone. And I would also kind of balance that with this in the moment experience you have where it's all here. Well, Benjamin, I feel like I can be myself. Well, yourself is having to walk on eggshells. Yourself is having to avoid not have the difficult conversation about, what is this? What are we doing? Right?
It has to be the holistic picture.
It's gotta be.
We say too, it's like when you're apart, that tells more almost. How are you feeling?
Yeah. You deserve the consistency, the safety, someone that's going to bring out, make you feel good. But also, I love this aspect, or something that can come up in dating and when you're forming relationships, is someone that maybe challenges you a little bit in positive ways, who maybe reignites a passion, or, they're really active. And now you're like, I think I'm going to do that too. Or they're a big reader or something like that. And you start reading again. And so I love that, someone could maybe bring out, I don't know, reignite a new passion or an interest. Like, I think this can also be really fun too.
Totally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're so right about the time apart. Are you spiraling or do you feel at peace about your connection? And the spiral is what causes us to be, I mean, have you ever said this? Like, I'm kind of not acting like myself. I found myself saying that a lot when I was, it like lost in dating. I'm like, I'm not acting myself. I don't normally do this. I wouldn't normally think this way. Well, that probably means you've been spiraling and then this person's bringing out this insecure side of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. How about y'all? Number 3. What's the third thing on this list?
Okay. The number 3 is there's sexual chemistry. We don't want to ignore that because I think, with all of this, ultimately, I mean, for most people, I don't want to say everyone, there's obviously people that are asexual that this isn't part of their repertoire. But if you are a sexual being and you're looking for a romantic partner that way, it is important that you have that chemistry. And we're not saying it needs to be there on day one. It definitely believe it can grow. We actually think the slow burn is a more sustainable path than that immediate spark.
Yeah.
But if you go on that date and there is nothing there, then we're not telling you to keep going on that date.
Right.
There's a point of it's not fair to either party. Like, do you want to be with someone that isn't attracted to you ultimately? Like, that is kind of the side of we don't want you to settle that way either.
I think first time having sex with someone can be inherently awkward. So we're not saying like, oh, the sexual chemistry has to be there from the first time you sleep together. What we're really trying to emphasize here is there a willingness to work towards that sexual chemistry? Like I always think about that episode on Sex and the City where Charlotte with her first husband, Trey, who was like the perfect man in her eyes. But they didn't sleep together till the first night. Till the night of their wedding. And he was impotent. And every time she would bring up the issue, he would ignore it because there was no willingness to try. So in this very important factor that matters in a partnership, it's like sometimes the sexual chemistry may not be given, but are both of you attracted enough to try to deepen that sexual chemistry? And that can definitely be, sex can get so much better with time when you are vulnerable and really deeply connected to someone.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that because that's exactly the question that I was going to ask because I was curious now from your perspective, sort of like how much time to give it, knowing that physical attraction, chemistry, and I think certainly emotional attraction, chemistry as well really plays into this, being able to be yourself, show up authentically with someone that's consistent, right? Everything is tying into one another. And I'll just share from my experience, like as a demisexual, I've talked about this somewhat on Flirtations, where I really need to have that emotional connection be the foundation before I feel like I can even start to open up to have that more sexual physical connection with someone. So for me, it's around, date 3 to 5 before I'm moving into that realm. But I think it's reasonable, and I want to hear your perspective too. If you are just not feeling physical attraction whatsoever, it's the chemistry is just not there. How many dates do you think you should give it?
Yeah. I don't know if there's like a hard, fast rule because I think everyone is different, but I do really like this 2-date default because I think the first dates are inherently awkward. People don't always show up who they are. Unless you're just like cringing and you're like, there is no chance this is going to turn around. Then in that case, like save both of your time. But if there is something there, like some curiosity that you're, even if you're not like dying to have sex with them, but you're like, oh, they're attractive, or I could be attracted to this person. Keep going and see how it builds, if it builds. I think that's a big piece of it. And it might not build. And that's okay too. I think we're always expecting to know immediately in today's world because we feel like we don't want to waste time with the wrong people because there's so many options out there.
Yes.
But you could actually have something really great develop. And even if it doesn't, like what's 5 dates. Like really, what's 5 dates in the scheme of thing? If that, I'm just throwing out that number, but whatever the number is, it's 5 hours of your life. You could at least say I was, trying to build towards something. I was getting to know someone. I was learning what preferences matter to me. That's never time wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had a friend that went on one date with a guy and she came back to me and said, everything was great. I thought we had great conversation. I just can't imagine myself kissing him. So instead of saying like, then get out, I asked her, would you be curious to go on a second date with him? And she said, yeah, I'm still interested in this person. And by the second date, she was massively attracted to him. And I asked her what changed between the first and the second. And she said, I felt more safe in that second date.
Okay.
That I was able to open up even the willingness to be sexual with this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they ended up having some really like passionate orgasmic sex like for a few months after that. But I think it goes to show, and what you were saying too, Benjamin, is like we also we have to know when we are put in the best situation to have sex and to feel sexually connected. And we should feel confident enough to communicate that with our partner too. Like that still comes from sexual chemistry may not be given from the beginning, but we are empowered to communicate that to our partners so they understand when we feel most sexual.
Absolutely. Yeah, so good. And I'll just share a quick experience too. Like, maybe you're on the first date with someone and this, has happened to me and they're like, but they're not my type or they're not my typical type, right? We sort of fall into that sometimes. But then on the date, I just found so much personality and turns out he was consistent. He brought out just the humor in me, the fun in me, right? He was reliable and I was able to develop that emotional connection. We had a relationship of a few months, right? Wasn't long-term, didn't work out forever, but you know what? It was worth it.
Yeah.
It was. Learned a lot. Yeah.
And then on the flip side, I could give an example of someone that I actually was attracted to at the beginning when I first met them. I think I also might have had a little alcohol in me, so that part of contributed to it. Yes. And then for whatever reason, the attraction started to decrease in time. And when we would kiss, I would kind of get that cringe feeling. And this person was attractive by all standardized means. There was nothing wrong with them at all. They were, on paper, a fine person. It just, for whatever reason, it wasn't there for me. And it was unfortunate because they thought it was going somewhere. But I also feel like you can't think of yourself as the bad guy because I was trying. I was being I really like this person. I want something as a person. I wanted to go somewhere. I'm going to keep giving it some time. And then eventually it got to the point that I'm like, okay, it's going down every time we see each other. That is not the right trajectory. Yeah. But I think we're so afraid to make the wrong call that we just do nothing or we exit ASAP. Yeah, it stings. I'm sure it was not a great experience for either of us, but we got over it. And he's probably with someone wonderful now.
Yeah.
For him.
And this is, right.
That's true. We don't know who he's with.
You're speaking to this experience where sometimes we feel like we have to stay with a connection or stay with someone because we don't want to be the quote unquote bad person. We don't want to let them down. But ultimately, you're doing a disservice to everyone involved by holding on to this connection that you just know is not for you and is not going to be long term. Let both of you go out there, date other people. It's to the benefit of everybody in the long run.
I mean, dating is a discovery process.
It
truly.
is.
We forget that.
And it's really, if you think about it, attraction should be easy. Magnets aren't fighting each other. It's attraction is a natural way for two people to get together. And I think when we're creating the 7 things that matter, is that these should be natural qualities and feelings you're experiencing in a relationship. Anytime you feel like you're forcing it, you're fighting against it, there's resistance, that's a reason to pause. And that actually brings us to the next one, which is we're calling the Sunday test. And this may be the easiest one to feel is, can you spend a Sunday doing nothing with this person? You know, like on Sundays, we're decompressing. We may have the Sunday scaries because Monday work is looming around the corner. Can you spend that day with this person just doing nothing and just existing and resting and not feeling like you have to entertain each other or not feeling like you have to do an activity? This is probably the most natural way to suss out your dynamic, is like, does this feel easy being next to this person on a Sunday?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really interesting, like how we decide if someone's a good partner for us, like a life partner. It's like through dates and, going sharing cocktails and talking about travel stories. And while that's exciting, that's a part of it. We're not trying to say it's nothing. The majority of your life, you're actually not doing these like high entertaining activities.
Yeah.
And that's why it's really important to look at this through like a more holistic lens, is like, can I just relax and be myself around this person and don't need something to be that entertainment that holds us together?
Yeah.
So good. I'm obsessed with this one, the Sunday, like the Sunday experience. Because I did an episode on this a while ago called Virtual Reality, and about how virtual reality and dating shows and social media and just the media in general has influenced and impacted our dating lives. And I think if you are watching The Love is Blind, The Love Island, Bachelor, Bachelorette, and everyone all the time is having these wow dates, that are very extravagant. And I think I know this has been true for me, get wrapped up into that as the experience of dating, that it's got to be the dinner and the movie and the show. But what about when you're just living your life? Can you just be with this person? Can you just sit with them and watch TV or read a book together or listen to a podcast? Like, what is happening in those moments when life is happening? Can you be with each other then?
I mean, I think at the root of it is that a great relationship, the core is friendship. And we often forget that.
Yes.
And again, we're not saying like, don't go on the dates. Like you should have that side of it too. But like, is this person someone you'd want to be friends with? Like, is this person you can just chill with? That's really important to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Wildly important.
I love that episode you did, because you also make this great point. It's like, look at how many couples actually succeed after they get off the island or the experiment.
Yeah.
Like, what's the success rate? 2%?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Right? Because they're thrown back into regular life. Yeah. Of course, if you are locked up into a room where all you have to talk about is you and this other person and your connection, of course you're going to fall in love. Of course you're going to feel all the passion. Of course you're going to think love conquers all.
Yes.
But then you got bills to pay. Your dog needs food. You need a roof over your head. You still got a day job to go back to.
Yes.
All of that influences your daily life. And we're calling this the 7 things that matter when you're looking for a partner. A partner is different than a romantic fling, a romantic connection, a passionate connection of some sorts. If you're looking for that, a weekend fling, throw all this out. Like, who cares?
Go on the hot air balloon ride.
Right. Yeah, go mini golfing for 12 hours and enjoy your cocktails.
Yes.
But this is for your life partner. It's a very different way to look at it.
I think that brings us to the next one, actually, if you're ready to go there.
My lucky number is 5. So I have been holding out for this one. Number 5.
Here we are.
Yes.
So this is maybe a surprising one, but they can navigate conflict with you.
Ooh, critical. Yes.
I mean, I will always remember we had this podcast episode on our podcast that we talked to Vienna Farron and Connor Beaton. She's like a very big therapist on Instagram. And then also he's a men's coach. And, they have it seems like they have a very solid relationship. So the point of our conversation was to hear about like what matters in a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And we ended up talking about conflict the entire time. And we were not expecting to go there as like so much of it. But the reality is when you bring 2 people into any situation, even in the healthiest dynamics, there's going to be conflict. And I think we think of conflict as like fighting and, just all that stuff, but it can be any little friction that comes up. Like in theory, like even in early stage dating, when someone doesn't send you the text when you think they are, that's conflict. And how do you deal with that? And we see too in early stage dating, people don't want to bring up conflict because they're like, we don't know each other well enough. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to bring up my needs. But only then will you realize, like, first of all, someone can't be a mind reader. They don't know what's going on for you. But it's how you get through it that says so much. Like, are they willing to hear where you're coming from? Are they willing to change an action because they now know what it means to you? All of this is so pivotal. And I guess, spoiler alert for anyone that's in a long-term relationship, the conflict always continues. It's like, how do you get through it together, and can you use it to bring you closer?
It's so important because I've touched on this on Flirtations as well. And what you were just speaking to, Julie, it's like sometimes we, especially in the early phases, like we hold back. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to upset somebody. We feel like we're going to push someone away. And ultimately, it's a lot of us aren't taught how to deal with conflict within ourselves, with other people. We aren't really taught how to just process and move through that experience. But I think ultimately it comes back a lot of times to communication. And how are you able to communicate through this? How are you able to consider where one another is coming from without that judgment, without that criticism, hold the space, and hopefully move towards a resolution that is mutually beneficial and can deepen the connection? I know that's this ideal sort of, point of view perspective when it comes to conflict, and you're not always going to agree, but it's to anticipate. And I know you see this and it like breaks my heart a lot of times. It's like, well, let's just make it official, right? Let's just be in the relationship. Everything will be better. Things will change. No. Let dating be that process of discovery. Who is this person? Who am I in this context of this connection? How do I feel? And can we, one person likes spicy food, one person doesn't. Maybe that's not important to either one of you. Maybe it's a conversation to have. I don't know.
But it shows how little, like seemingly little things can be points of friction. And that's normal.
I think conflict, it has a bad rep to it because we think it means fighting. But what if we were to refocus conflict and say it's an opportunity to get closer to someone? Why wouldn't you take that opportunity? And when I speak to couples who've been together, who cares how long, but they're healthy couples, and I asked them to reflect back on memories of when they knew that this was like the person for them. Very rarely do they talk about moments of celebration. Very rarely is it like, oh, that blowout birthday party we had, or that trip we took to Miami, or it's not about those. They often cite conflict and how they were able to get through the hard times. And when you think about it, celebrations are easy. Dates are easy. Of course, people want to be around you when you're happy as celebrating and playing mini golf. But when you are at a low point and you're trying to express your needs, but you're also looking for an opportunity to get closer to someone, those are the memorable moments that you can only carve out with the person you're with, right? And those moments are not easy, but they're so worth it. So we hope that this point is not for you to go out and like try to fight everybody that you go on dates with, is to look for opportunities to grow closer. And that sometimes may manifest into a conflict. And that is a good thing. That's okay.
Oh my gosh. Bringing the heat today for this conversation. I love it. We have a few more moments left. Want to make sure we get the flirties. Point 6 and 7. I have somehow been keeping up. Math
You're
brain
doing
on
great
today.
You're a mathlete.
Okay.
Oh my God. Can I be on Kitty Heron's team? That was a Mean Girls, right? I think you set me up for that.
I did.
Love it.
Fantastic. All right.
Okay,
what else?
6. Number 6. They're aligned with what you're looking for. This seems so obvious, yet for whatever reason, we sometimes bypass it. And we're not saying that you need to have every second of your future mapped out. But if you know there's core things that you are looking for, it is so much easier to be with someone that is on that same path, that you're not fighting an uphill battle with. If you know you want children and you're with someone that wants to be, or you're monogamous and want children, and you're with someone that's like non-monogamous and just wants to like travel the world untethered, that's going to be a really hard thing to rectify.
Yeah.
If you're both unsure about something but willing to grow together, maybe that's a little more doable. So it's, how do you see like where someone wants to go, and then make sure that you two are at least in alignment on the basics.
100%.
And that at the macro level, you want to think about that your futures and those futures are aligned and what you're looking for. But that also at the micro level, and we kind of outlined this in the book too, is what is the culture of the relationship you want to create? That's also needing alignment, right?
Yeah.
My partner and I, when we first started dating, the first 6 months, we took those 6 months to outline a culture of what our relationship dynamic is. And one of them, an example, is whenever we face conflict or disagreement, we must be holding hands and saying, first of all, I'm not going anywhere, but I want to express this.
Yeah.
That changed everything for me, because now I know I'm safe every time we have a conflict, going back to conflict again. But we have a system of how we process our feelings and our conflicts. Are you both looking for the same thing in how you create the system of a relationship?
Yeah.
I hope everybody who listens to this is excited about it, because you get to create your own system. You get to create it and collaborate on it together. Only if you're willing to.
Only if you're willing to. I know I'm excited. I'm out there dating. I'm a single flirty. So you better believe I'm going to be using this book as my blueprint, as my guideline to
Love
get it
it.
all. Yes, to date with just more focus, right? Because it's, making sure you're aligned on some of those really key things. You can hold that space for one another. So wildly important. In the final moments, number 7, lucky number 7.
The big one.
Okay.
Again, seems so obvious, yet sometimes we ignore this one. They want to be with you.
Wow.
Oh, God.
Wow. Wow.
But
I mean, yes.
The right partner does not need to be convinced that you are right for them, or that they should spend time with you or make an effort. And you can tell when you're a priority to someone, even in the early stages. We're not saying that they need to drop their entire life for you, but you can tell when someone's making room in their life for you and they want to incorporate you. And you also can tell when they don't. When they have it. When suddenly they're only calling you at the last minute on a Friday night at 10 p.m. because they have no other plans, versus integrating you into their life.
Yes. Yeah, I know I've probably seen this. Sometimes it looks like the passive reciprocation trap, where it's like you're always the one initiating, you're always the one texting first. You're getting those responses, so it feels like you're getting that attention back, like they're interested. But if you stopped reaching out first, where would this go? Or I see this a lot from the more situationshipy, casual relationship kind of things, where it's like, ooh, I'm afraid to ask for more, and then maybe you do, but they still refer to you as their friend, or they're not talking about you, they don't want to take you out, kind of thing. Everything's sort of happening in secret, and I'm like, yes, you're to a certain extent, will you have complete clarity 100% of the time? Not always, because we're bringing so much experience and story into the dating process. But someone that truly wants to be with you, they're gonna make that known.
Right.
I know it seems obvious, but again, all of this stuff, it's like when you get the emotions, and it's not so obvious.
I mean, one of the things that for my partner, one of the things that was such a green flag for me was that on the date, he was setting up the next date. It was very clear, like, where we stood.
So sexy, right?
And I think some of it, though, was like he wasn't someone that actually had like a ton of dating experience. I think sometimes the dating culture can make us pull back on some of that. So that's why, again, it's like, how do you look at like what is happening in modern dating and say, like, is this actually aligned with the relationship I'm trying to find? And then am I showing up this way myself?
Yeah, absolutely. So So good. Oh my goodness. Julie Krafchick, UA Shu, thank you so much for being a part of the Flirtations fam, creating this episode with me, sharing so much with the Flirties. The book, How to Be Dateable, is out now. I will have it all linked in the show notes. Your podcast, Dateable, of course, streaming. I'll send them to the Instagram, to the socials. This has been fantastic. Any just final words, goodbyes? Yes, the floor is yours.
The floor is ours. Well, we want to declare. No, I think. Thank you so much for having us on your podcast, Benjamin. We're so aligned with your mission as well, which is like do everything that's authentic to who you are. If we just root everything we do to our authentic essence, soul, whatever you want to call it, at the core of your heart of who you are, then we will always be on the right path, right? Because you can only be on the path to whatever's authentic to you. Absolutely. So thank you for you spreading the mission as well. We're happy that we're like so synergistic in that way.
Yeah. Feeling the love. Thank you.
I think just last note too on 7 things that matter. Also, this is the gut check. These are the essentials. And you might not see everyone on day one. Sometimes the conflict takes a little time to come out. But if you're seeing the positive signs of all these, keep going. And with any relationship, it may ultimately not be right, even if these signs are here. But this is the ammunition to keep investing in people because they are like, if they're hitting these 7 things, it means that they're also investing back in you.
Yeah.
And it's a good gut check for anyone to get out of the mentality of, what's holding us back in dating and being in these unreciprocal relationships and what's eating at self-esteem and mental health and all of that. So I think if we can at least be the chooser and use this as a guide, it will just make all of our dating lives feel a lot more in our control.
Yes. Yeah. So good. You have your guide with this episode and with the book. Go pick it up.
Yay, do it.
Thank you, Benjamin. This was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Flirties, that's a wrap on this episode of Flirtations. Thank you so much to our guests for this conversation today, UA Shu and Julie Krafchick. Definitely check out their podcast, Dateable, their book, How to Be Dateable, and of course on the socials as well, putting out so much incredible information. And I hope you just loved this episode. Yeah, I know you did, and got some good takeaways on how to be dateable, but of course also how to make relationships and how any of this works. So yeah, thank you so much for being on the show today, Julie and Yue. And thank you to you, the Flirties, for listening, for tuning in, for streaming, wherever you may be in the world. Thank you so much. Please rate, review, subscribe to the show. Share this with someone you even mildly like, someone you want to share some BFE, big flirt energy with. I'd love you for it and appreciate it. Yes. Signing off officially here at Flirt Headquarters. My name is Benjamin. I'm the Flirt Coach. One last thing left to say and do, and that is to wish you very, very, very happy flirting.